So I'm going to first talk about my history of password management. I want to then talk about guessing passwords, why you should use complex passwords, how to stay protected in these days, password managers. Now there's a whole bunch of them are available. We'll go over them briefly, and my solution, which Adam gave away the punchline of the presentation by saying that it's a KeePass. At first, I had one password that I used for all of my sites that was trying to figure out what it should be. So I looked down and I saw something written on a mouse pad, and I used that for my password. And it turns out that was really easy to guess. Then I decided to start using a database, and I stored it on a USB stick. So wherever I went, I'd have to bring a USB stick. And as you can see, there could be a problem because I can't find it right now. But I would have to copy the database from the stick to any computer I'm using, make any changes, copy it back. It wasn't possible to use with a smartphone, which I didn't have at that time. And there's a risk of the loss of the USB stick. As you can see, I just can't find mine right now. Then I started going into using Dropbox as a cloud site to hold my USB information, my database. And from this, I was able to access it from many devices, especially useful because now I had it by this time. This is about 3 years ago. I started to have a smartphone, and I was able to access Dropbox on my smartphone and so forth. But and I liked it because there was needed a password to access Dropbox and also a password to access the database. So I felt fairly secure. When it was on a USB, I was using a program that it allowed me to create an encrypted directory. And then I found out that had been breached, so that wasn't very safe. Then Dropbox decided that they wanted to raise some funds, or for whatever reason, they decided to restrict the maximum of 3 devices. And since I have more than 3 devices, I had to seek alternatives, so I switched to iCloud. Now, one of the reasons I switched to iCloud is because my phones were iPhones, and now, especially that my computers, this is a Mac, so iCloud is a part of what's going on with Apple. It can be other options as well. So I keep my most recent version on iCloud, and that means I can access it from all my other devices. And when I make a change on my upstairs computer, it can then be referenced on my downstairs computer, which is quite nice. So I maintain a redundancy. I keep the most recent version on iCloud. I make database changes on iCloud, and then I copy the database from iCloud to other places, the local documents directory on each of my computers, each of my machines. On my iPad, I download it. On my iPhone, I download it to the machine. I also put it in a Dropbox and a free service called pCloud. Now, I'm sure there are a whole bunch of other cloud options that you can use. pCloud is a bit nuisance because you got to keep logging in. But anyway, and question?
Quick question.
Yes.
I'm unclear whether the database you're referring to at this point in the presentation is a KeePass database or something else.
It turns out that it is a KeePass database, or it was.
And had you been using KeePass in your earlier points, or was it a less secure database?
I believe it was KeePass that I was using. But okay, for the purposes of this discussion, it could be a spreadsheet. And one option I didn't talk about is that I had a friend who said, "Oh, I have my database. It's on a piece of paper. I have my database on a piece of paper," and it was a very worn piece of paper. And I'm thinking, what happens if he misplaces that or somebody else takes it? There goes all his passwords, and he has no choice. So,
well, I was also concerned in your presentation, because if this was like an Excel spreadsheet, when you copy it onto someone else's computer and then delete it, it's not really gone. Whereas KeePass databases are very self-encrypted. So I just wanted to just toss that out there.
No, you're making a good point. Had I used a text file or had I used a spreadsheet, then when I delete it from the machine, it goes into the directory allowing it, to trash, which could then be restored and someone could get to my passwords. The machines were typically mine. I wouldn't copy it on a public machine or on a machine that wasn't mine.
Okay,
And then I share the database. I share the password database with my wife by way of pCloud. So we can both log into pCloud and she can get at the database if she needs to. If she's nice, I tell her the password. I usually do. Okay. So now, one of the issues I've had using the database is when I'm going to different places, I'm concerned that I'm not using the most recent version. So I found it useful to put a last changed entry on it so that I put this date code, which says October 9th, 2022, October 9th, 2022 at 6:17. That's when I last changed the database. And then I have an entry that tells me what I did on that day. And I do this manually, and this is useful in case I get out of sync. I know what changes I have made, and so that I can keep in sync by knowing if I have the most recent version. I use the KeePass application that I'm using to create my new entries, which lets me to have passwords that are typically 14 characters or more, upper and lowercase and numbers, and sometimes some special characters. I can try out passwords and it'll tell me how good it is. So a given password here might be this one here, CQLB . It's 14 characters, upper and lower case characters, and there's at least one number in it, and it has an entropy of 82.06, which KeePass determines to be very good or good. Another one is this one right here, which is 18 characters, has an entropy of 101.6, and it's deemed excellent by KeePass. Now, what that means is that it's going to take somebody a long time to guess it. Now, if they can get at my database, of course, they can get at that password. But if they're trying to break into my Facebook, and this is my password in Facebook and it isn't, then they're going to have, if they're going to try a brute force, they're going to have a considerable amount of time that's going to take them. By comparison, the word password has an entropy of 1. Yeah, the capital, it has an entropy, and I spelled it wrong, of 2. And if you put some special characters, it's an entropy of 3.58. And if you drop the RD at the end, it has a higher entropy. Entropy is a measure of its complexity. And it's interesting that as soon as you take out the RD, it doesn't look like WORD, which is probably why the number increased. Let's see. No, that's next for the demo is at the end. So let's go over here to the beginning. So this entire presentation that you can see on the screen right here is online. It's in my my wiki, and this is indeed the URL for it. If you just go to wiki.toku.us, you can look for the security presentation if you want to follow along or look at it at a later time. So let's see, on this page.
Hey,
Steve, could you put that in the chat for us?
Yeah, thanks.
Put that in the chat?
Yeah.
I suppose I could do that. If you also look around, you can see that I have other things. I have quick links to stuff on helping me out with the Gmail. You can do some good searches and so forth. This is a Doku Wiki, my notes for Doku Wiki, and it's my wife sending texts. Help for MacBook, Mac OS, Windows, and other things. And the BNUG page, and I have a Lexington Computer and Technology group. So they're there on my home start page. You can also see a great deal of information, including some links to some funny videos and other things that maybe we can talk about someday. So everybody has bank accounts and credit cards, insurance policies, and so forth. And you want to keep them in a way so that nobody can guess the password. And as I had originally done, I used the same password for them all, which might be good. I could use a complex password and have everybody use the same, all my places use the same password. But if that password gets lost, everything is open. Anything that I could have available to people could be taken with that one password. So there's an importance of hard to guess passwords. Now, this particular site tells you how you can go about guessing a password, and you might want to try that on your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, neighbor, etc. Use common, easy to guess passwords. Try sequences like this, a dictionary attack. Go try different words in the dictionary. You can ask them some questions like, what's the name of your husband, wife, son, daughter? Maybe that's their password. Brute force, now that's a little bit more. You can use fake websites to lead people in to try to get them to get the password. Phishing email that you respond to can give up your password. So basically, if you go to a website, you want to be real careful about entering your password. You really don't want to enter your real password there. Sometimes I go to a site, I don't anymore, but they say, what's your social, before we can go any further, tell me your social security number, and I'll give them a fake number, and they seem to be happy with it because they're not real. On WikiHow tells the steps to follow to guess someone's password. I was leading into that. And this particular page tells you try these different things, reverse the letters. Here you had reverse or change the letters. This is Brunhilde backwards. And can anyone tell me what this one is here?
Adam Frost.
Adam Frost.
Yes. So, I mean, if that's his password, Adam, you might want to change it quick. So how long does it take to crack a password? Here's Kim Commando. This is a year and a half ago. And the numbers are going to go much faster. If you're using a numbers only password, it's like instant. I mean, you got to put a couple million passwords in of numbers and bang, you get it really fast. If it's of 10 characters, 10 characters is 100 million passwords. That doesn't take very long at all. However, if you put numbers, upper, lowercase, and symbols, it takes 5 years. On the machines a year and a half ago. You can imagine people have a host of machines. Maybe they're using machines to generate crypto keys. They could divert those to guess passwords, and that 5 years can drop down significantly. The best gets when you start to get to 12 with numbers, upper, lowercase letters, or 13 or 14. We're talking about 9 million years. So I try to aim for around a 14 password that's 14 upper, lowercase, and numbers. And sometimes I'll put a symbol in there depending upon what's required. And you can see that that gives me quite a bit of protection. Questions so far?
Well, as much as I get the math of this, unless if I were the malicious person trying to break in, if I could get my hands on your thing that I want to break into, and I could take it home with me, so to speak, and try it offline, that's one thing about how much time I might spend trying to guess your password brute force. But in my opinion, this whole brute force thing is kind of a myth, because just like an ATM machine, if you put in a stolen card or you forget your own PIN at an ATM machine, we all know that after 4 or 5 tries, the machine eats your card and you can't get it back. And if you go to any reasonable website like a bank or email system and you try the wrong password 3 or 4 times, it typically locks the account. So, you know, all this hand-wringing about, oh my gosh, you got to prevent brute force for an online password, I think just misses the mark. I think data breaches or keyloggers or guessing or tricking you into revealing it with a phishing email are much more active threats than any brute force concept. So I take brute force with a grain of salt here.
Okay.
I just had a question about how the relation between the length of the password and the number of years it takes, how that changes over time. Like 5 years ago would have been a different set of numbers, right?
Yes. Speed of machines. Machines are faster now than they were 5 years ago. Let's put it this way. You can get faster machines now than the machines you could get 5 years ago. So
This-
as time goes on, the machines get faster and faster, which means they can do more calculations per second, which means it takes less seconds to do the same thing that would take you to take less time to do the same thing than you could do 5 years ago in the same amount of time. Something like that.
All this is true, but I want to second what Martin is saying, which is that as we're thinking about security, we want to ask the question, where is the security really? And the question about the length of, I think Martin's making a really good point about emphasis, not about possibility. It's certainly true that KeePass, which we all really like a lot, if you got a hold of my KeePass database and you had the right kind of computer, you could do some serious brute force to get into the KeePass database. It would actually be much harder than it sounds, but it is possible. And it's possible that as computers turn into quantum computers, that it'll get easier to do that kind of attack. I think that's true. But it's also really important that we think about what the real threats are to us. And just in turning it back over to Steve Eisenberg, just that the real threat that most of our customers have is they're using the same password over and over. And since some sites get breached and those passwords get retrieved, you can go online and there's like places where you can get free Facebook passwords, thousands, millions of them. If you can guess the password that way, rather than doing this kind of attack, you're much more likely. So having a mechanism so that you're not using the same password over and over, I think is much more important than using a really tough password. Steve Eisenberg, do you agree or disagree with that?
You got to make sure that you do protect yourself. You don't want to use the same password, and a password manager will help you use different passwords. Using a lengthy password makes it difficult for someone looking over your shoulder to, oh, the password is silly boy. Oh, okay, I can write that down and go off and do it. But if the password is, as I have here, one of these up at the top, I forget where it is here, the real lengthy one with 14 characters, it's not the kind of thing that someone can do shoulder surfing and get. So I'd like to continue here so I can make it through this and let Drew get in here. You should assume that an attacker knows a lot about you. Your name, birthday, your parents, they know sequences, combining things together, passwords you've used before. So they're getting some ideas of the kinds of things that they can use to guess. And how do you protect yourself? And that's what the most important thing is here. Use different passwords for every site. So if someone breaks into one site, they can't get into the others. Use strong passwords so that they can't easily guess them. So don't use ones that include your name and birth date and so forth. Use randomly generated passwords so that there's no human element in there, because if a human starts getting involved, then you're most likely going to use a password that someone else might be able to guess. The security questions, what's the name of your first pet?
It's 8 o'clock.
When did you graduate college? Those are passwords as well. And these are things that someone can find out. Someone can find out the name of my pet. Someone can find out when I graduated college, and they can use those as potential passwords for the security questions. So I treat the security questions as passwords as well. I record them in my KeePass database. So when it says your best friend's name, I might use green grass on Mars as that answer, which is not at all related to what the question is, but is not something that someone would be able to guess. Using two-factor authentication with your phone would be helpful. And protecting yourself, providing for next of kin. If you do have these passwords, and as I've done, I stored it in the cloud, I give my wife access to that spot and the password. If the time comes when she has to get the passwords and I'm not able to, she can. So here are some ways to remember passwords. Piece of paper, sticky note on the computer, a spreadsheet, we already talked about that, or a password manager. It can be free or paid. It can produce good passwords in one spot. It's backupable. And the concerns are where the passwords are stored, a possible breach if they're stored online, and a loss or theft if stored on a thumb drive on your computer. Questions so far? So there is another option to remembering passwords. Can you see the picture? This is one way to remember your passwords. Not that I recommend it. It becomes difficult to change it.
I'll bet
And
someone
it's-
out there has done.
I bet you there's somebody who has done that.
Well, this also brings up the so-called biometric, fingerprints or retina scan. You can change a textual password at any time, but you can't exactly change your thumbprint. And it can get stolen and someone else could use your thumbprint.
Yes. Okay.
Could you say why if you store KeePass online, how that's different from having an online password thing?
Sure. Let's go into the next part, which we'll talk about that. LastPass is the first one I'm going to talk about. But the best way to create hard to guess passwords, if a human's going to guess the password, then make it unhuman. Use a program to generate it. I'm going to have some options in the following here. You can do your own DuckDuckGo, or if you're still using Google, you can still use Google to search for best password managers and look for those recent information. I have half a dozen places where I got information at the bottom of this table. This table shows the different online password managers here. For instance, LastPass is one password manager. For the free version, you can access on one device type, either computer or mobile. But the password for many of these is stored online, so that if you go to the LastPass, you might be able to guess the login of somebody and get at their passwords.
Mm.
A little more on that, Mary. Hold on a second. These are some others: Dashlane, Keeper Security. The free version has a number of limitations on all of these. RoboForm is one device. And then if you want to do more stuff, it's free for one device, but it's 36 or 60 or 35 a year if you want to do that. And then you get down, and NordPass has one. Then you get down to KeePass. I'm using KeePass XC, but KeePass Info is the site to go to get KeePass. And you can run it, you can store the password file on your computer. You can put it on a USB and carry it from computer to computer. The password file is encrypted. It's not in a place where everybody will expect it going to be. For instance, if you're using 1Password or some of the others, the password is going to be online in a spot where people know. But if you use KeePass, then it will be in a spot where you know. So the person will have to figure out where it's stored, be able to access that place where it's stored, and then know the name of your file, and then be able to undo the password for that.
Steve, can I just cheer that statement even, and just say really strongly how important what Steve just said is. When you have for me, this is the deal breaker for online passwords, which is when you have an online system, it's exposed to 2 billion people with computers. When you're on the internet, your program is on the internet, which means there are 2 billion people out there who can have a go at it. They can try different passwords. They can try to suss it out. When you have a KeePass database, it's not on the internet at all. So there's
Unless you put it there. Unless you put it there.
Yeah, unless you intentionally put it there, but put it there so people can access it. I just want to emphasize that this, for me, is a major selling point for KeePass, which is that it's much, much less exposed by a huge factor than these other programs.
Now, what's one disadvantage to KeePass if you are trying to pay for services is that there's no paid version for KeePass. Every one of them is free. It's free open source software. Okay, which means that a lot of people are getting involved in making it, but it's an encryption engine so that no one can guess your passwords with it. But the fact that it's available this way means that it's free. There's no paid version. And some of the others here only have paid versions right here. Bitwarden, $10 a year. So you got to pay for that. Oh, $10 a year, Bitwarden. I got two screens here. So these are the references that I used for this information. And this one right here, this Tech Radar is a very good use for looking at the different offerings if you want to explore the ones that I have in the table above here. And this particular thing from about 5 years ago, actually, while I definitely agree with using a password manager, you should also be careful with who you trust your information. LastPass recently had a data breach. This is back in 2017, where hackers got away with a significant amount of personal information. Thankfully, no personal encrypted passwords were taken, but the fact that they were able to get as much as they did is concerning. If you think that a company whose only goal is to increase your online security would be able to defend against intrusions by attackers, you'd expect that. Now, if you store it in one of these other paid services where it's stored online, hey, it's easy to get to, but it can be breached. So what I do, as I told you, is I use a KeePass application on multiple devices. I use KeePass XC on my MacBook. I use KeePass Touch on my iPhone and my iPad. I don't have an Android and I'm not using Windows. I store the password in iCloud, local document storage. I copy the password as I told you. KeePass XC is very nice because if I make a change to the password file, it gets propagated to the cloud. So when I go to my other machine, it gets it. On the iPhone and iPad, I need to download a version because I'm using different software. And I told you I've added an entry to the password file that tracks the changes. I'll show you this in a minute. I'm going to do a little demo of the program. The benefits are it's free. And because of my use of the iCloud or Dropbox, it's available on all my devices. I have one password to remember. I can use long and complex passwords. I can keep track of my past passwords so that if I go to a site and they say, you got to change your password, I go to my KeePass entry and I put my new password there above my old password so that I have them both remembered. And I put the date when I put my new password in so that when you then go to the next page where it says what's your old password and your new password, I have them both available. And I'm repeating myself here. Many of these features can be handled and provided by other password manager software free or at cost. It keeps whole logins and passwords, other information like social security numbers, okay, secret passwords, answer to what was your dog's first name, where it doesn't have to be your dog's first name, your first dog's name, past passwords, and all of the data in this database is encrypted. There are many applications that you can access to KeePass, and I'm repeating myself here, I guess. And this is the history. And if there's not any questions, I'll go in, I'll give a brief demo of KeePass.
Go for it.
All right. You can see that I'm using KeePass. This is my real password file, and I'm not going to go into there. This is one that I use for an example, and I'm going to enter the secret password here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Okay. So now this is the way it looks like. This is a very small password file. My real password file has hundreds of entries. This is my log right here, and you can see that I last touched this on October 9th. Just a second. And it looks like I added some fake notes here, but this is the way I maintain my log entry. And that is I show the date right here that I last made a change. And these are the things that I did right here. I added credit cards, updated social security cards, and so forth. There are other accesses here, and perhaps Adam or Drew can tell you about that. I just deal with the entry. I do have a very simple use here. So you have passwords. I have online purchases for Amazon. Here's my password I used for Amazon. I used it in 2019. I changed it on August 18th. Here's another password. Oh, I did 2019, April 12th. That's when I did this one. And here's my first one. You see I'm getting longer on my passwords. And these are the answers to my best question. My best friend is Capture. My father's middle name is Card. The dog name when I was a kid is Device. In elementary schools, arbitrary answer. These are just arbitrary answers. Let's see which other one has information in it. Banking, oh yes, I have banks here. I have Creeks Bend Bank and Trust. And my name is Oscar 12. That's the password that I'm using there. And the passwords are changed. The Monica Bank, the Wilson Creek Bank and Trust. Any event, if I was going to use one of these, and these other guys can show you, I would go to one of these here that has a password, this one right here, and I would go to the site and I would have the URL here, what it is, and I could use that, copy, paste it into my browser is what I do. There's got to be better ways of doing it. I don't do that. And then I would copy and paste this password. Now, you'll note that the password, I have it up here, and I also copy it down here, because that way, if I accidentally go like this and then, oops, hit a character, it goes away and I've lost it. Now, I can cancel and get out and it's still there. And I don't want to save them in this case. But that way it prevents me from accidentally making a mistake by storing it in a separate spot. I think that's all I've got. If anybody's got questions.
Question?
Yeah, Martin, that's your job. What's a question?
I appreciate that you put the history of your passwords in the notes area, but I have some memory of a recent or previous demonstration by Adam that KeePass also tracks the history.
Let's see. There is a history. Okay, so this is the, okay, I haven't looked at this before. So this is the first time as well. Looks like I made some changes on these particular things right here. This is when I did it, the time and date, and how long ago it was, and what I changed, but it doesn't tell me what the changes were.
Oh,
It doesn't
okay.
tell me what the old and the new password were and what the changes to the notes were. It just tells me that they were changed. Is there a way to get at that information? I'm not
Adam?
aware of
Adam, do you know? Sorry, you're muted if you're, I can't tell if you're speaking.
So I may not know the exact steps now, but I do believe there is a way to track the history of changes. I believe.
Okay, well, this is, as far as I can tell, this is the history of the changes I made to it, but it just gives an overview of those changes. I don't think it tells me what it was before and after. That's why I do it down here.
Oh,
But
no,
it
I
might be a
think
way
you've
to,
got, I think you've got a very good manual process.
thank you. It works for me.
And Steve, may I ask a question?
I hope you will.
So I'm not familiar with KeePass XC. I think from when I first met Adam, we would go to 99 and select KeePass. Is there a big difference between, I'll just call the KeePass standard versus KeePass XC?
It's
Well,
the user
Steve's on a Macintosh,
interface
yeah.
is different.
Yeah, this is a Macintosh, in case that clarifies.
This is, you can see the little thing in the corner here? That tells me this is a Mac. So I have to go with what applications are available. So that's a good segue into KeePass.info. It's a good segue to the page. And we accept. Okay, this is KeePass info. This is where you'll go to get your version of KeePass. Now, these versions here, I believe, are Windows versions. If you want to get a different version, like for my Mac, or for your iPhone, or for your Android phone, or for your iPad, you'd want to go over to downloads. And now you can for the Windows, you'd want it, if you were on a Windows machine and you wanted it, you can get KeePass 2.52, you would download right here.
Steve, can I comment for a moment?
Oh yeah, what's up?
I apologize for stepping up for a moment. I just wanted to say that my own preference for getting KeePass for Windows is to use ninite.com because you get the latest version and it works really well and there's no nonsense. What I found is the KeePass website often can be very confusing. There are a lot of different downloads to choose from.
I haven't gotten to that yet.
And so I find that Ninite for Windows and for the Mac, I find that KeyPass XC, which you can get by Googling it, KeyPass XC.
Yeah.
X is in xylophone, C is in charming. But I would not do it from here. This is such a confusing, in my own opinion, this is such a confusing list that I found myself downloading weird stuff and it just got me all muddled. So if you Google KeyPass XC, go to their website, and then
There
for
is
the
a KeyPass
iPhone,
XC website.
try Googling KeyPass XC. It should bring you to the right place.
Right there.
And then for the iPhone, the program and the Android, I believe also, that program I've been using with customers is Strongbox, which is a very effective program that imitates KeyPass very, very well on these.
Yeah,
these
I tried that and I tried KeyPassium and I tried Strongbox and there's some reasons I didn't want it. You know, okay, the bottom line is all of these ports here are ones that you can use with your KeyPass database. So what's the difference between these? The way it looks on your screen and the way you interact with it. Some of them will be easier for you and more difficult for you, but the underlying database is what is the same. And you can see here, it ends in KDBX. That is the database. And this particular database here or here is one I can reference on any of my devices that have a KeyPass port. It could be KeyPass XC, which, as Adam says, I would recommend for these particular places. I find them useful. If you want to look at other possibilities, if you're more of exploring, Adam is right. You can get very confused with this, but if you want, you can look at ones here to try them out, or just use KeyPass XC. And there's more information on this page, but for Windows, you'd want to do this, or maybe you want to use KeyPass XC, up to you. Any other questions? I'm
And
about ready for
Steve,
Drew
may
to
I
say.
ask one more?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if
more than
you're familiar with Strongbox, but I have Strongbox on my smartphone. But the only downside I found is any changes I make to my KeyPass program on the desktop, it doesn't sync up to Strongbox.
That might be why I wasn't using it. KeyPass XC, you can see on here. When I go to this one, I'm not gonna open it, but you can see it goes to Cloud Docs, which means it's going up to my cloud. This one here, I'm not sure what, oh. Yes, so both of these are on my cloud, which means that if I had another machine here, I could go and access this database. And as soon as I change it or save it, it'll appear available on the other. That's one thing that KeyPass XC does. So I guess that's the reason why I didn't want to use Strongbox.
So hold on a sec. I just
Go
want
ahead.
to point out that Tom, I'm not sure how you're set up, but Strongbox does synchronize if you choose. If you put a file on Google Drive or on Dropbox or some other, or iCloud, and then you point to that file using Strongbox on your iPhone or Android phone, it will synchronize perfectly with your computer.
Now, if you make changes, are the changes ported back to where they were coming from?
100%. So you're using the same data file. The data file is sitting, imagine everyone that you have the data file sitting in the cloud somewhere. That data file is pointed to by the Strongbox on your phone, but also by the KeyPass on your computer or several computers. They're all using the same database. The thing to note about KeyPass is that it's a networkable system. It was designed from the beginning to be networked so that it doesn't matter, as long as you have the file on the cloud in some place, in a reasonably safe place. It doesn't have to be incredibly safe, but a reasonably safe place. Then your individual devices can reach up to that place, and then any changes you make will get made in that file, which will then be accessible by all the other programs.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Pricing.
No, I never figured out how to get KeyPass to, be part of Dropbox. And then for me, KeyPass is great, but when I'm out and about,
Yeah.
I
So
did Strongbox and I have my important information on Strongbox. But
In
if
some-
I've added 50 non-important entries to my desktop, They're not on Strongbox.
Yes, and in some ways, that strategy is kind of cool because it's really secure. But it's also a nuisance because if you make a change in your main KeyPass, it won't propagate. So Tom, here's what I suggest. Take the database and put it in Dropbox. Then go to Strongbox, install a new Strongbox and say, and it's going to ask you, where is your stuff? And you're going to say it's on Dropbox. And they're going to ask you for your Dropbox password and it will then connect to it. Give it a whirl.
I will give it a try. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You also, Adam, I'd like to point out, this is Strongbox. I got on the screen right here. And the free version doesn't allow Touch ID unlock. When I'm on my phone and I'm using my my thing, I can touch and the password file is opened up for me. This one doesn't do that unless you go to the Pro, which means you're paying for it.
Yes, and so
So
that,
that's something that you're going to need when you're deciding what you want to use.
yes.
You might want to consider that.
Well, is there a product, Steve, that does use that doesn't charge for the iPhone?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
product is it?
Let me see. It is, go to that page. It's called KeyPass Touch.
KeyPass Touch.
You can't
And
see it.
is there possible to see a feature list comparing? I mean, is there, just so we could compare it to Strongbox?
I don't know.
Not a big deal, but I think it would be good to have a product that we all like. I've been using Strongbox, so I just know it a little bit, but if there's if KeyPass Touch is better, I'd be game.
Well, I've been, KeyPass Touch does not automatically update where it came from. I have to manually do that.
Oh, wait a minute. If you have KeyPass Touch, you
Yep.
can't point to a file in the cloud?
I have to go to my files on my iPhone. I have to go to my files and tell it to download it and send it to KeyPass Touch. I don't have a good solution that allows two-way changes on my iPhone or my iPad yet.
So Steve, you might want to check out Strongbox and see, and even though it has that disadvantage, I don't think it's that expensive, the paid version anyway. At least I was really impressed at its ability to synchronize.
Question? So Steve, after you download it to your phone, made your change, how do you copy it back?
There is a way to do that. I go back to files and I can send it back up to the cloud. That's what I can
Oh,
do.
the
But-
Files app on your phone.
Yes. But
Okay.
generally, the way I do it is I make my changes on my computers and not on my handheld devices.
Oh, okay. So you treat your handhelds like they're read-only, but the computer is where you edit.
I can make changes so that I can manually insert them at a later time. It's not perfect with regards to the handheld devices. The Strongbox pricing turns out to be at least $19 a year.
Right. What I'm saying is you choose to only do read-only on your phone for simplicity.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you saw where I have in my password safe here, I have, this one particular entry that shows the log. That way I can go to my handheld, make a change, note it, and see if I can post it back up to the cloud. That's what I can try. And now that way I can tell if there has been a change.
That's another very good manual discipline.
Yes. I am done with my talk unless there are more questions.
Thanks so much, Steve. And I'm sure you'll have more to contribute. Does everyone in the group, everyone who's here, does everyone get this? It's really okay to say, but you don't. Like if there's anyone who's sort of saying, what are these people talking about? Is everyone, I know Dick and Jill do. They're open source groupies.
Well, I have a comment. For me, there's kind of 2 or 3 different, I don't know what you call them, categories or situations. There's what I would choose for myself, because I'm a techie. But there's what I might recommend to a friend or a client who are not techies. I just had a conversation the other day with a client who was using the same password for everything. And he had a breach on some social media account and then went and changed all his passwords to be something else, the same across the board. And I gently suggested that we have a conversation about this. And after 20 minutes or so chatting on the phone, he said, okay, you sold me. And the only way he would go, he also has employees who need access to passwords as well. So multiple people distributed across, multiple states. I didn't know enough about KeePass to pitch it to him, but he was comfortable going with LastPass. And I didn't want to get into the potential hacking there. Because that's, so for somebody in a commercial situation, running a business, has employees, I feel uncomfortable at the moment recommending something that's free and open source, because in that crowd, commercial and well-known seems to be a better sell. So
Martin, I can see that, but my main concern for him right now, from what you're describing, is if he's going with LastPass, make sure he pays for it.
oh yes, well, he needs both sell. That was one of my first questions for him. He needs
Yeah.
both desktop and iPhone access to his passwords. But are you saying?
I just want to emphasize this for a moment for everyone. Never ever go with a free online password program. Because my experience with them, specifically with LastPass, is that one of my customers lost their master password. She went through the password recovery process with LastPass, and it did not work. And so we called LastPass and said, we got a problem here. And LastPass, the staff there said, we're sorry, you'll have to recreate your passwords. I want to repeat this. The staff of LastPass said, we're sorry, you have to recreate your passwords. This is completely unacceptable. And we tried to raise hell in various ways. It made no difference at all. There's no appeal. You sign something when you sign up with all these online services saying that you have no rights. It was a really very awful situation. And so my recommendation, first of all, I don't like using these services for that reason after that bad experience, but also if you are going to use one of these services, if it's paid, and I say the same thing about Google, if you're using one of these services, use a paid service so that they have some responsibility towards you. So, end of rant.
Okay, I think Drew has something to present. Martin, why don't you finish your question? Then I'd like to go on to Drew if we could.
Just out of curiosity, if that client had paid up at that point, would that have gotten better support? Or was a backward-looking problem?
You mean if they suddenly given money to LastPass, would they have helped them?
That's my feeble question. Yes.
I don't know the answer to that, but my suspicion is no. My suspicion is that they won't take responsibility. The free version is like not our problem, and you can't turn it into a paid version. You have to create a new database.
Oh, you can't upgrade. Oh, okay.
I don't know. It's a really good question, and I should have thought of the bribery angle.
Okay.
Drew,
Okay, thanks.
Drew, you're on.
I'm on. Okay, hang on one sec. All right, let me do a screen share. I have that. Go. All right, let me get
And again,
my,
if people could mute during his presentation, that would be nice. Unless you want to ask a question.
great.
Thank you.
all right, so keeping in line with the presentation being about KeePass and open source, some of the stuff that I have written down is covered, but most of it's not. KeePass is XC is the particular app that I happen to use on Windows and on Linux. It has a nice user interface, I think better than the original KeePass interface. And it is consistent across the three major platforms, which I like. So if you're giving it to somebody to use, it's a product that they can't unfortunately use it on the iPhone and the iPad to make it really and on an Android phone. It's strictly a desktop based app. But it's a good one for your desktops. This is the one thing that's kind of probably unique about any program is that KeePass is not one app, it's a dozen apps or more. It's really the database file that gets you the information. So it's just the software that gets you there. And I choose KeePass XC. On Windows, it supports fingerprint biometric authentication that Windows does. So when I open KeePass XC, it first prompts me for my master password. And then it opens up another box saying, okay, Drew, go ahead and scan your thumbprint and verify that it really is you. Or if you have facial recognition, it all depends on how your Windows computer is booting up, logs you in. If you log into Windows with a thumbprint, it'll ask you for your thumbprint. If you log into Windows with hello, or it recognizes you on your screen, then the database will recognize your face and it'll open up for you. That's a nice thing that I like about this product above the original product, is that even if your master password gets compromised, somebody still needs to cut off your thumb and carry it with them, or drag you onto the computer. When you have a web browser.
Drew, can I just ask you a clarification question? Are you saying that with KeePass XC, you have to have both the master password and the thumbprint?
I chose to set mine up that way. It's an optional configuration.
But
Sorry,
you have it
I
just
don't
for,
think Drew understood the question.
I'm just say again,
I don't think Drew understood your question.
maybe.
Yes.
Drew, what I'm trying to understand is when you set this up on your computer, you have to both give your thumbprint and you have to enter the master key?
Here, I'll show you right now. I'll skip ahead and do the demo.
Okay.
I just like to, can I comment a second? Adam, I have my KeePass XC so that I only have to use the thumbprint.
Okay.
Um,
And
Yeah,
does
so-
it stay open, Steve? Like
It stays open for a time and then it turns itself off and I have to log in again.
So if somebody were to get a hold of my laptop and it was not in my possession and somebody saw KeePass XC on my menu and they try and run KeePass, the first thing they'll be prompted for is a password, just like everybody's accustomed to. And I'll type in my password.
We don't see it right now.
Drew, your screen share is preventing us from seeing your demo.
Oh, is it? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
you have to share the other part, the other screen. To
I
stop
think
your
you need to share screen, not window.
Oh, you know what it is? It's the app preventing this particular screen from being shared, I think.
Oh, it's a clever app to not be visible over the internet.
Yes, it's a non-screen capturable app.
Well, you could take a screenshot and show us the static flavor.
Let's see if I do that. Oops. Can you see that?
no.
Oh, let me,
The app might be smart enough to prevent your screenshot from working.
yeah, it won't let you capture the password entry.
That's really clever.
I'm at the point where it does the same thing on my cell phone, but I know how to disable it on my cell phone for the demo. I didn't realize that this wasn't visible to you guys. What I have visible to me on my screen right now is a password prompt asking me to unlock my database. Now, as soon as I hit enter or the unlock button, another dialog box pops up from initiated by Windows. And you may not see that on the screen either.
We see that.
We actually can see it.
Oh, you can. So when I clicked on the unlock button, Windows popped up this box, which is not part of the app. This is part of Microsoft. So maybe that's why it's visible to you guys. So now I need to actually put my finger on the fingerprint reader on my laptop before the app will open.
So Adam, the answer to your question is yes, it requires both.
Yeah.
So did I
Unless
answer
that
the
more choice,
second?
that more choices may take him over to a Windows password prompt, but cool.
So this is an app it's got a nice user-friendly interface. It supports autofill, auto typing. What this does is if you have a browser and you go to a browser page where you're going to log in, you can just click go into your KeyPass app and find the entry for the website. And it will, you can just click on the keyboard icon that's right here, and it will automatically go to the browser, switch to the whatever the previous window was, enter your username, a tab, a password, and an enter, and you're logged into your account. And you can customize the auto type. So if I go in and go into auto type, you can inherit the default auto type sequence for the group, or you can enter a custom auto type sequence for a website that maybe has the username on one page. For example, you may have to press your username and then the enter key and then get prompted for your password on a different website. So you can change what you're doing. You can copy both at the same, oops, what I just do. You can copy just the username or just the password. You can have it submit a username and then also press the enter key for you. And then there are a whole bunch of optional symbols and things that you can fill in. I don't have a password or anything in this entry, so which is why it's not showing anything. But on similar to this, my Android app that I use also has biometric fingerprint authentication. I don't have it set up to use, I have it set up to use that in place of a password. So I don't use a password on my cell phone. I use both on Windows strictly because it popped up that way when I first loaded it, and I said, cool, it recognized my computer. There's nothing special that I did to configure it. So on my cell phone, let me share the screen. Can you all see my cell phone now?
Yeah,
In my utility app, with my utilities, I have a program called KeyPass to Android. That's the app that I use, just like Steve has a different app that he uses on the Mac. This is an Android app, and it's available in the Google Play App Store for free. KeyPass Droid, the one next to it, is a local app only, meaning that you can take an offline copy of your database file and open it locally on the phone if you don't have access to the internet. KeyPass to Android is programmed automatically. The screen went blank because it's on the screen. It's right now prompting from my fingerprint. When I put my finger on the fingerprint, it opens up my database. And it auto synchronizes to common cloud service databases. If you go into the database, if I were to open another database and I say open file, I can directly from inside the app choose to open a file from my Dropbox account, my OneDrive account, my Google Drive account, an FTP server, whatever I want from pCloud is directly supported. So every time I launch the app, because you're on a phone and you're connected to the internet all the time, the first thing it does is logs on to the cloud server and downloads a cached copy of the database. So if the phone loses access to the internet, Android, the program will still be able to open your database file and give you access to your passwords so that you can use them locally. I have opened files on my Gmail server. You can I keep them on Google. That's my cloud server choice for me. Android users are required to have a Gmail account for their phone, just like Apple users are required to have an Apple ID. So it was the logical place for me to keep my database file. Windows also because I keep my database file on the server, I use the Windows version of Google Drive from Google. It's a free app that lets you synchronize your Google Drive files. So if I were to edit my database file, it would end up in this list in my system tray, and it would tell me that I can check and verify that it properly synced. That's just the standard Google Drive synchronization thing. So that's what I do there. Let me get back here for 1 second. Let's get back to KeePass Android. On my cell phone, there is a feature. Apple may have a different name for it. Android calls it autofill. If I go into any app on my phone or a browser on my phone, it will automatically prompt me to allow me to fill in the password and user ID with the KeePass to Android app. So if I go into a website on Chrome and it prompts me for a user ID, the Android phone will automatically pop up a box saying, would you like to use autofill? That's a feature of Android. And the KeePass to Android app is my default autofill app. So it uses that, it pops up the fingerprint reader. I put my finger on the phone, and a second later, I'm logged on to my website. That's one of the reasons why this is my go-to program for Android on the Google Play Store. KeePass Droid is a standalone app. It doesn't have cloud support. So I keep a file on my phone. I copy the KeePass database file down to my phone. And if I need to, I can just use KeePass Droid to open the database file. Cloud storage support. I use Google Drive on Windows, and I use it on Android. KeePass to Android. Oh, yes. And on Linux, I put the RO in here to remind me that Google Drive works on Linux. I've gotten it to work. Only I haven't gotten it to sync properly in 2 directions. So I don't recommend Google Drive if you're a Linux user. OneDrive, I have managed to get working to a degree on Linux, although it's not as great as Dropbox is. These are instructions to follow for setting up OneDrive on Linux Mint that I followed I found these on the internet, followed them, and they worked. Dropbox installed from the Linux Mint App Store, and I put in my account name, and it just worked. If you're a Linux user, there's a program called InSync, and it also is available for Windows. That is a multi-cloud synchronization program. If you're a Linux user and you want a reliable cloud sync program, InSync is it's a fee program. It's not free, I don't think, but it's there for you to use. The other option, and this came up earlier in the meeting, if I want to recommend a password, if somebody says, Drew, what should I use for a password manager? And I know they're not a complicated computer person, I don't typically tell them to use KeePass at all because they have to set up the synchronization themselves. Bitwarden is a server-based platform, open source, free to use. I have it installed on Windows. I have it installed on my Android phone, and I don't use it as my primary app. I loaded it more to learn about it for this meeting. It supports autofill on the Android phone. It works on Linux. It works on Windows. It works on the Mac. It's really, and you only have to pay the $10 if you want to do the 2-factor authentication feature that I showed you with the other app. You can load it on, I've loaded it on all of my devices. It hasn't limited me to anything so far. And this is what I like, is the server synchronization for those who want the simplicity of that feature.
Excuse me, Drew.
Mhm.
So are you saying Bitwarden is an alternative to a LastPass style online password manager?
Yes, it is. It fits along the lines with LastPass. You can choose somebody that you want to be your partner in crime, in case you pass away, and give them access to your database. It is I would say the open source app to go to if you strictly want a password manager that doesn't require money. There might be better password managers that you can pay for, but this is a very good, reliable program for people that want a simple password manager.
Which one are you talking about? That's
Bitwarden.
because I see that it costs $10 a year for one user. Oh, that's right. The free version is a limit. Oh, okay, never mind. It has a free version.
You can, I don't know if you can back up or download your database file like you can with KeyPass.
Excuse me, Drew.
Mhm.
I'm looking at their website. There is an export vault function, which includes a CSV and other formats.
So you can get your data to take it with you when you need to leave.
Yes. And there's other export formats as well, but CSV looks like the most generic.
And I haven't tested whether or not it works if you go offline. I was offline recently for the hurricane. I should have tried it then. I can do it manually afterwards, but I don't know what happens if you're completely cut off from the internet, if you can get into your Bitwarden database or not. That's something that I'm going to have to test out separately. Very quickly, I will show you what the Linux desktop looks like. I have, this is my home folder. When you install Dropbox, it creates a Dropbox folder for you in your home folder. And then you just go into there, and I have a documents folder, and I have KeyPass XC, the same app that I use on Windows. I can double click on this database file, and it opens up, and it looks just like Windows. This is what I was looking at when you all saw nothing. It shows the entry of where the database file is located on Linux, and you can choose the same features for logging in. I'm not going to bother doing the database, but I've got Dropbox, OneDrive. The database program is the same database program. I have a program on Linux. Linux Mint in particular comes with a feature called online accounts. And I set up Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive using the online accounts app from inside Linux Mint. Google kind of worked, not great. Microsoft, I couldn't get it working until I followed those instructions on that web page that I posted in my notes. Other than that, and Google Drive happens to appear for some reason as a network. And that might have something to do with why database file synchronization doesn't work so well. This is an accurate representation of my account. It's just nothing to demo because it doesn't work right. I would go with Dropbox if I were a Linux user. It's free and it works on Windows and it works on the Mac, works on Android, and it's a good way to do your password database. Any other questions? Otherwise, that's about all I've got.
Thanks so much, Drew. This and Steve, and I just think this is all a really interesting world. So I wanted to ask people in the group to maybe go around and ask people how they're handling their passwords and see what you've learned today, whether you're thinking of making changes. Chris, welcome to our group. How did you hear about us?
Hi, Adam. Well, I heard from you.
Excellent. Can you tell us about your password life?
Oh, it's pretty sad, especially after listening to all of this. I actually have a little book for my personal passwords. And for work, I put everything in Outlook.
In like a mail, like an email?
My Outlook, yep, my Outlook contacts.
So just a couple of comments for the whole group, not just for you, Chris, which is that what Steve and Drew have presented is a really good foundation for how to use these programs. But I think it's also really important I think it's all really important to understand why you want to use this program. So I think that the vibe I've gotten from Chris and Steve, is that, from Drew and Steve, is that they're using it mainly for themselves. Like, this is how they get into their stuff. And Steve mentioned that his wife has access to it. I want to really point a spotlight at this. This is a big deal. And what we found in our company is that most people do not have a sensible succession plan. Most people don't have a sensible arrangement of what will happen if you're sick. You don't even have to die. You can just be sick enough so that you can't get access to your stuff. And all hell's gonna break loose. Nowadays, everything's getting paid online. There's all kinds of stuff that needs to be accessed, and it's gonna be really difficult. I've pointed out to people that even if you're the legal executor, if you go to Bank of America and say, I'm the legal executor, you can just imagine what they're gonna put you through before they give you access to somebody's accounts, you can pay the light bill. And so we really urge people to think about this carefully. It doesn't mean you have to go all computer. If you want to put it on paper and give it to your executor, that's fine. But you should do it and do it promptly. You should have some mechanism in place so that in an emergency, somebody can do the basic things that they need to do. I would add, just to echo something that Steve Eisenberg was saying about the secret questions. The secret questions are a real vulnerability. We call it the Sarah Palin problem in our company, because Sarah Palin, when she ran for vice president, someone hacked her email. And the reason why was the secret questions were, what is my husband's name? And what college did I go to? Well, you're a public figure too. Everything about us is now on the internet. You can get my college post office box from 40 years ago on the internet. It's just really crazy. So the secret questions, making them fictional and putting them in your password manager is a really good idea. But also there's another, again, this succession issue comes up. Even if you've chosen clever secret questions and you've given the right answers, your executor probably doesn't know what they are, or won't know how to spell them, or won't know the punctuation. And so thinking of your password list as a communication tool, it's actually in many ways less about keeping the bad guys out and more letting the people you want in, and having a good system for doing that. So I really recommend that you do this. And this also means coming up with a password management system that your friends understand, your executor understands. And that might mean a notebook. The problem with a notebook is that passwords change all the time, and you end up crossing stuff out. And I've had lots of customers with notebooks who say, well, is it this one? Or maybe it's this one. And it makes it much harder for them. So I would definitely recommend that people use a password manager. And I want to take a little bit of time now to talk about KeePass less in the mechanical ways and more in the using ways. And in particular, one of the reasons why I like KeePass is because of its resemblance to a notebook. Most password managers are really complicated. They have all these levels to them. They put stuff in your browser. They make you log into some website. And for me, this is just too complicated. And so what I like to do is just go in and be able to put in the passwords and have someone else get them. So I'm going to just take a few minutes and do that with you all. So hold on just a moment. I'm also, while I'm going to do that, I'm going to make a plug for a nice trick with Zoom, which is if you use remote control and zoom to a different computer. You don't have to keep changing the share, which is a really wonderful thing. So KeePass, for those who use Windows, KeePass is downloadable from Ninite. So I'll just make a quick plug for Ninite, which I've actually invited them to come and speak with us. I hope they will. So if we go here and go to ninite.com, you're able to click here on KeePass and download it. And you're guaranteed to get the latest version of KeePass for Windows. With the Mac, KeePass XC is available on a website, so you can download that as well. Drew, I really appreciate your idea of using using KeePass XC throughout. I'm so wedded to the PC version, and most of my customers use it, that switching I think would be challenging, but I will definitely take it under advisement. So here I am in KeePass.
Question?
Yeah, please.
Did I see correctly that Ninite says it can update things simultaneously instead of in serial?
That's correct. If you checkmark all the programs you use, it will update all of them for you.
Yes, but does it do them simultaneously or in series?
Well, I don't know what you mean. It does, as Ninite does everything one by one. It goes to this program, it does its thing. It goes to another program, it does its thing.
So all at once doesn't mean simultaneously. It means
You don't have to do anything.
and you won't have to bother yourself.
That's exactly what it means. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're very welcome. So here's KeePass. When you install it, what I recommend is you go to Tools and Options and change the under Security, there's a clipboard auto clear time. I want to emphasize that KeePass was created by Fanatics, and I'll explain what I mean in detail. But KeePass was made by really crazy, I love them, but they're crazy people. And so they created this auto clear time that erases the keyboard after 12 seconds. And I don't know about you, but I can't do anything in 12 seconds. What they're asking you to do is copy something, get it over to the program where you're putting it in, and get it in within 12 seconds. I think it's unreasonable. I changed it to 120, which I definitely recommend. So, now, here's KeePass. And you create a new database, just like you do in Word. You say File, New, and it says New Database. Where you're going to put it in your Documents directory. I recommend creating a folder called Passwords, or you could just put it here and give it a name. And the name will be Adams BNUG database. Then it asks for this word. The word master, unfortunately, is going out of style in the computer world, but it still exists in this program, so we're stuck with it.
Adam, quick question.
Yes, please.
Did I observe that it prevented you from using spaces or punctuation in the database name? Or was that your choice?
My choice, and I don't think there's any problem. It's just a file name like any other.
Okay, thanks.
So the master password, I think, is a really important concept. And what I emphasize to customers to think about for this is to come up with a good, strong password that you're going to use not only for your KeePass database, but for your backup as well. So with all of our customers, with very few exceptions, back up. And if you have the same password for the backup in KeePass, you tell your executor that password. It's a good, tough password, but it gets into the critical stuff. This is the compromise. Remember, security is a compromise. There's no such thing as absolute security. You're always compromising between trying to get through the day and making things safe. And so I recommend picking a good, strong password. And our company actually just changed our policy about this. So the way we used to do it was take a song or a poem and take the first letter of each word, which is a very good method for creating a password. So for example, row, row, row your boat becomes RRRYB. The problem is a lot of customers have had a bit of trouble with this. And we found a simpler way, which is just as safe and easier, I think, to work with. So I'm going to demonstrate. What you do is if you're helping your customer create their password, you turn to them and you say, give me a word. Martin, could you give me a word?
Lasagna.
Okay. And one of the great features of KeePass, it has the 3 dots. If you click on them, you get to see what you're doing. Okay. We know what Martin is thinking about. Steve Eisenberg, could you give me a word?
Sure. Anthropology.
Misspelling.
Misspelling could be a benefit.
Yes. And Mary?
Sailboat.
Okay. So this, in my opinion, is a little too long for someone to have to type over and over, which you'll have to do with the KeePass database, but let's go with it. So what I recommend to customers do is they take this password and they write it down on a piece of paper and put it in their wallet and make sure that they get the case right. So this password will meet almost all password tests in the sense that it uses an unusual, a special character. It has a number and it has letters and it has a change of case. So most of automatic password tests will pass it.
And it's ridiculously long.
I think it's too long for a good KeePass database because it takes too long to type. And we're all, but we'll go with it. It's okay. So now.
Is your gold standard 3 words? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is your gold standard for this new technique 3 words? Is that the
Yes,
background?
it's not only my gold standard. I checked in the UK, the national security authority uses this method. This is an uncrackable password by any standard. No one can break into this password. There's no way they can guess it. There's no way they can brute forth it. It's quite safe. So KeePass has gotten very thoughtful. They have an emergency sheet. So if you print, it will print out your master password for you. Just to give you a feel for this, I chose the print option, and we'll print to PDF, and you'll see what it looks like. Using Microsoft Print to PDF. I think it doesn't seem to open Acrobat automatically, so we'll do it. So here we are in documents, and I just created a PDF called test. Let's take a look at it. So this gives you the sheet and tells you what the master key is. Oh, I see. I've never seen this before. They don't actually tell you the actual, they want you to write it.
Mhm.
That's very weird. I thought that this sheet would print the master password. I never use it because I always have the customer write it down. That's really interesting. Okay, thanks for letting me see that. Okay, so here I am inside KeePass. And what I want to emphasize about it is the way it resembles real life. So for example, let's create a new entry. So we wanted to have a password for the Boston Public Library, which I really recommend, by the way, because I've got amazing resources. Usually the username is your library card. And the password is the password you set up with them. For most websites, you want to let KeePass pick the password for you. So notice here that KeePass has picked a really crazy password. We'll talk about that in a bit. And notice it's 20 characters, it's a huge password. And then down here, we can put the web address of the thing we're going to. So, oh, did you see that? Did you catch that little move I just did? Right click, URL, open. So what that's going to do is that URL that I put down here, it's going to go right to it. So I end up using KeePass as my index to the internet. Oops. Here I am. Okay. So if we log in here, you can log into my library dashboard. And it's going to ask for my username and my PIN number. So actually what I recommend is once you get to a login screen, copy this and put it into KeePass. Put it right in here. It's nasty, but you don't have to remember it. And now, if I start over and go here and open it, it'll take me right to the login page if all goes well.
Adam?
Yeah,
There's one minor flaw in this procedure.
go ahead.
If when you click login, the web page it brought you to, if the address for that web page has a basically a temporary session number,
Yes, yes, yes.
it's a bookmarkable page, then
Yeah.
that method doesn't work.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of things that don't work sometimes. Websites, there are all kinds of different websites that handle things in all kinds of different ways. For example, my credit union only allows me to put in my username, and then it asks me a special question before it will let me even put in a password. You have to dance with these different websites in their different ways. But a simple website like VPL, what I can do is go here and then go back to KeePass, right click and auto type, and it will enter the password and the username and the password, and then it will hit login. This is a sample, I don't have the right password, but you see the idea. It'll enter everything for you. The net effect of this is that if you set this up with all your stuff, you never have to remember a password again, pretty much. Now, I recommend if you're doing Travelocity or Uber, you might want to write down the password and put it on a piece of paper, because when you're traveling, you don't want to depend on technology, fancy technology. You want to be able to get in someplace. But for most passwords, you're doing it from your computer and you end up with 100, 200 passwords we all have. And they'll all be listed here. You never have to make them up. What's really getting people into trouble is you want to sign up with something, right? So you go to Netflix. Started by a guy from Massachusetts, by the way. And you sign in and you don't have an account. So this is not the place to do it.
Adam,
How do you sign up for Netflix?
Adam,
Yeah.
you were right there. Please go back to sign in.
Oh, was there a place?
Yes. Scroll down.
Oh, here, sign up now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other option was to put, here, we're kind of back where we were. You put in your email address, right? So this is what people do all the time. They put in their email address, but here in KeePass, we do something different. We create the entry first. So here we say Netflix. And this is where KeePass really comes into its own. So I can put in, add some keywords, movies, waste time, TV, whatever you want to put here, popcorn. And then you put the username, which usually is going to be your email address. Then you sit tight for a second. You go ahead and click here, and I recommend when you're using KeePass, click the save button all the time, just like you do in Word. Just save my whole database there. Now, I'm going to go to Netflix, but I didn't put in the URL, so let's do that.
Excuse me, Adam.
Yeah.
You jumped over the part where you accepted that KeePass generate a password for that entry.
You're right. So here's what I'm going to do. I just created my entry, right? I'm going to copy the username, and it's going to put in my email address because that's what I chose for the username. Now I click Get Started and watch what happens next. It says finish setting up your account, and now it wants the password. Now this is where most people say dog's name, date, plus 225. But this is where KeePass really earns its keep. You click here and you copy the password that KeePass created. You don't know what this password is and you don't care. It doesn't matter. it's stored in your KeyPass and it's saved. And so now I'm creating a plan. I actually am not going to sign up for this, but I could. And it would then have my password in the system. You're gonna sign up. And yeah, I'm out of here. So I don't actually, I'm curious whether they actually created this account. We'll find out. But anyway, if you are going to the account, you can go here, right click and do auto type. I'm just going to sign in. They did indeed create the account. This is a real account now. I have a Netflix account, it's a little scary. And so I'm going to sign out. And now I want to point out that once you get 100 passwords, you're going to have trouble finding Netflix. But what's beautiful about the search is you can just type the word pop and it's going to bring it up. You can type MOVI and it will bring it up. The search is excellent. And so they have these categories. I don't recommend them. They don't work very well for a bunch of reasons. The folder system they have, I don't think works very well. So I don't organize stuff. I throw it all in a big heap and then I just search for it. It works really, really well.
See, Adam,
Yes.
I use I use a password vault, but I don't use KeyPass. At home, I use a Word document, which is buried in my system. I know where it is, but nobody else does. And at work, I use OneNote. So I have one page for each login. With enough keywords, I can search if I need to, in
So
both cases.
So the downside of that, Therese, is that do you have someone to help you if you're sick?
Do I have someone to what?
Help you if you get sick and you need to have somebody pay your bills and get into your bank accounts and pay like renew
Nope.
your driver's license or something if you're
Nope.
not.
Don't need it.
Because
Nope.
why?
I don't have anybody. I don't need anybody in that in that context.
My own opinion is that you might want to rethink that. We've had customers who have been in this situation and it's been really bad. When you don't have someone who knows how to get into your stuff in an emergency, it's a tough road because someone has to deal with it eventually.
Well, when I get a significant other, then that will change.
My own opinion, again, this is just Adam talking, is that whether we have a significant other or not, I'm single at this time in my life. And one of my good friends has my stuff and in an emergency will step in and help me. I really recommend this.
Yeah, but I don't have any, that's the problem. I don't have any friends in this area.
So one of the things we might want to wonder about, given the computer business, is this, I think, would be a very good business model for somebody to be an escrow person to help someone in this situation. Something to think about. One that would require a great deal of trust, and that's another thing. One thing I do tell people though is that suppose you're a parent and you have 6 kids and you have a bit of money and you don't really want to give your kids control over your assets. How do you give one of your kids, maybe you pick one of your kids as the executor, how do you give them access without giving them access? Meaning, how do you give them access only when you're really disabled? Now, in the legal world, there's a way to do that. There's a special document that does that called a power of attorney.
Yeah,
But in the computer world, we also have a method that I just want to share with you because it relates to KeyPass very well. You pick 2 people. So you say, I trust this person, but I don't want to burden this person with access to my assets right now. Only if I'm sick or die. So you pick 2 people. You regularly email the KeyPass database to the first person, and you give the password to the second person. This decreases the risk that someone's going to conspire against you, removes the burden. If money's disappearing from your account, it's not fair to suspect either one of these people because they would have to collude in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
So this is a segue into a second comment about this, which is one of the great beauties of KeePass, which Drew and Steve have alluded to, but I'm going to really emphasize. Let me show you. Here in the documents directory. Oh, this iris, by the way, is grown by my cousin Stephanie. It's very beautiful. In this folder, there is a database called Adams VNUG database.kdbx. This file is the KeePass database, and it's the only thing you need because KeePass is open source and available all over the world within 3 minutes. You can download a KeePass program and get access to this database if you know the password.
Yeah.
So here's the beauty of this. You can take this database and you can email it completely safely. You could post it on the internet. You could put it on a billboard. You could do all kinds of things with it, and nobody can do anything with it because they don't know the password. So unlike most other arrangements with passwords, you can safely email this to somebody on a regular basis. And this is what I recommend. If you email it to someone on a regular basis, they will have a copy of this that's more or less up to date. If you make it a weekly routine or a monthly routine, it'll be pretty up to date. And they'll have access to your stuff if you give them the password, or you give another friend the password and they can get together to get access to the database. I find this really wonderful. And just to emphasize what all three of us were saying, the big difference here is that this database is not on the internet. Even though I'm joking, I'm saying you can put it on the internet. Even if it were on the internet, nobody would know what to do with it. There's not a really reasonable way for somebody to take this database. You certainly wouldn't post it publicly on the internet. Indeed, I would not recommend against that because we've been talking about brute force. With enough time, someone can break into a KeePass database.
Well, Adam, you're channeling the founder of LifeLock.
So what does the founder of LifeLock say?
Well, when he started the company, to advertise the company, he ran around with one of those rolling billboards
Yeah.
with his social security number on it.
Oh, I see. And he was showing how strong LifeLock is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't mean to taunt the bad guys here. What I'm trying to say is, in real life, what I'm recommending everybody do, everyone in this group do, some variant on this, which is put your important passwords in a KeePass database. Lock it with a really good password with 3 words, an asterisk, and a number. Give the password to your friend. Give the KeePass database to another friend, or send them to them regularly, and you will have a very secure way for people to help you in an emergency.
All right,
And-
so how did the two know about each other?
They're both your friends, and you tell them, you say, if you want to conspire against me, get together and do it. He has to have some kind of trust to make this
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that my opinion is that for many people, the damage that somebody could do by getting access to your database passwords is nothing close to the damage that will happen if people don't get access to them in an emergency. The access to your stuff in an emergency, in my opinion, is just a much bigger deal. The worst that's going to happen if someone breaks into your accounts is they're going to steal something, which is very hard to do. Most of the companies that have money, if they suddenly see large amounts of money moving around, they're going to have a cow. It's not easy to do, but I'm not encouraging people to make it easy for people to break in. I'm just trying to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
That the use of a program like this as a way of helping people in an emergency is really great. And the beauty of KeePass is it's very easy to teach people how to use. Because it's cross-platform, a family with different kinds of computers can access it.
Well, I've used KeePass on clients' machines when they had passwords embedded in the browsers.
Yes.
So I'd use it to scrape the browsers to get the passwords out.
And why is it bad,
centralize them.
Shreese? Why were you against having passwords embedded in the browser?
Because if the browser crashes and it has to be reinstalled, it can take the passwords with it.
Oh, that's an interesting point, a very good one. Another point is that anyone who gets access to the computer, if they get into the browser, they get access to all the passwords.
That too.
Now, there is some more security built into Firefox. It has a lock on it, but it's not a pretty site. And you may be using your browser now with your passwords and transitioning slowly. And again, I recommend slowly to a program like KeePass is a really, really good idea. KeePass can be run with a cloud base. It takes some extra work and you need some help from somebody who knows how to do it, but it's definitely worth it. There was something else about this too. Oh, KeePass is fully networkable. Now, this is a really beautiful thing. If you're in a family, you and other people in your family can share the same KeePass database. And so one person can put in a password and then the other people can get access to that.
So
This
do
is
they
really
each have their own account?
No. So all they need to do is have access to the KeePass database. So for example, suppose we take this database, this KeePass file, like so, this one here,
Yeah,
and we install KeePass on this computer. We go to the file menu and we open and we browse to the file, yes?
yep,
So we go here and we open the file, like so, right?
yeah,
This is a networkable program. So if we're not on this computer, but we're on a network, we can go file open and browse the network to where the file is, as long as the file is shared, and open the file. Both people can use KeePass at the same time and add stuff to it, and it will synchronize the passwords. If the file is on Dropbox, you can have people in different locations using the same KeePass. Think about the implications of this. In a company, you can have a very secret database. You have a database for keeping information about vendors, like what the FedEx numbers are. And you can separate them out into different KeePass databases. And so you have these different Rolodexes, which different people can get access to based on the password. It's a really lovely thing, and we've used it enough, so I feel very confident about it. It works very well. A few glitches, but mostly really, really good.
Can I ask a
Yep, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if any of you have ever printed out your KeePass database.
Yes. We can do that right now. KeePass has very robust printing and exporting features. So for example, print. There it is. And then we go ahead and print that to the printer.
And that prints the whole thing?
Take a look.
It may be hard to read, but basically each row is a password entry and each column is an element of that entry. It doesn't have any horizontal lines.
Yeah,
But
so here's Boston Public Library. There's the username. There's the password.
Cool.
Now, what I think is an even more wonderful feature is the export feature. So suppose you're in a company and you want to give an employee access to a certain folder of passwords. So this does have a folder feature, and this is where using it would make some sense. They're called groups. So if you add a group and you call it FedEx, and in there are a couple of different FedEx numbers. So we'll call FedEx 1 and FedEx 2. FedEx 2 is for international shipments, say. So suppose you want to give that employee only these passwords. You can right click and you can export the group. You can decide which kind of KeePass you want to use. We're going to use the KDBX 2.x format. Notice it's creating a brand new file. We're going to call this FedEx only. And now we have a new file in here. Watch. I'm going to do file. Close this one. Then I'll do file, open. And notice now we have two databases here, and this one is FedEx only. Notice the difference in size. Slight difference there. Now let's go ahead and open this. Now it's going to use the master key that we use in the first place. So lasagna. And I have no faith in my ability to type this successfully, so I'm going to type like this. Anthropology. It's actually kind of nice. I like this password. sailboat. Oh, and a number up there, right? 67? Was it 67?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, I'm in here, but of course, you don't want to give your employee the master key to the other one. So you just go in here and change the master key and give them a new one. And then this password is completely independent of the first one. Really easy, really straightforward.
Dependence also means they don't synchronize. So if you have changed the FedEx, you have to tell the employee.
Well, when you break up a database like this, you no longer have the you have a new database called FedEx, and actually you'd be wise to go in and remove the passwords from the original one, because you don't want exactly what you're describing, Martin, is going in and messing with the original. So this would be a situation where you're really breaking up the database rather than keeping it in both places. But it's very useful for that reason. But it can also be good if you need to give the database to two different people, you want to make some decisions about who has access to what. The thing I want to emphasize is that you may notice that none of this requires rocket science skills. Most of this is very simple, straightforward stuff. You don't need to know much about the internet or about much. You just have to have a feel for the commands of this program, which you'll get the hang of in a brief amount of time. So we're going to wrap up in just a little bit. Any closing comments or questions before we wrap up?
Anna?
Yeah.
Two things. While you were talking, I Googled crack KeePass database,
Yeah.
and I found some articles that, we can talk about later, but might be useful to take the techniques of cracking a KeePass database for a test drive, just to see what current technology can accomplish, obviously subject to the speed of one's machine.
Does it look scary, Martin? Does it look like somebody could crack my database easily if I?
Well,
Wrong hand?
it all seems to hinge on the cracking technique, like, dictionary attack. I don't know if dictionary attacks employ multiple words. So it all boils down to the technique and the time and the speed of the machine. But basically, since KeePass is not an online thing that counts how many tries you've made, it does lend itself to brute force.
Well, this vulnerability you describe it is a real one, in the sense that if someone gets their hands on we say in the computer business, physical possession is possession. So I do agree that there's a vulnerability inherent in KeePass's way of being safe, which is if someone gets the database, in theory, they could do a job on it. And so being careful about how you send it. So I might want to revise my comment about email and recommend perhaps a safer way of sending the file to someone using send this file or another encrypted tunnel. So let's bear that in mind. But if you think about how difficult it is for someone to get their hands on this file, it is really difficult. Like they have to get into your computer, get the file, they have to get it to themselves, they have to get it to their supercomputer. Compared to breaking into a website with an easy password, KeePass is definitely superior, I think. You have a second thing, Martin?
What's the encryption level with KeePass?
Wait, I'm sorry, was that Charisse?
Yeah,
What is the encryption level? It's AES 256.
okay, that's fairly sophisticated. It's gonna take a lot of power to crack that.
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic in the short term. Martin, did you have a second comment?
Well, actually, two more. I years ago started using and I'll put it in the chat here, a different program called Splash ID, and I chose it. There's two different websites that I think take you to the same thing. They have a cloud-based option, but I use their non-cloud option, which is basically from my computer, I can synchronize to and from a mobile device only over my local network.
Oh,
So I never touch the internet, which is my preferred approach that straddles all these various concerns. And most of the time when I'm out and about, I don't change a password with my mobile device. I just consult the list. But that works great for, oh crap, what was my ATM pin? Or, those sorts of things. And I can still change, in theory, change on both devices and synchronize, but I never use the internet. I think that's a reasonable middle ground. And one can export and print. And one of the fun things about a Splash ID is one export option is plain old CSV, which creates a new security problem, right? Where'd you put the CSV file? But they have an option to export to their own encrypted CSV flavor. Whereas, there's, token, comma, token, comma, token, and the tokens look like yucky stuff because it's been encrypted with the master password. So in a future rebuild of your database after a disaster, but you have the export as backup, you would need the master password to parse the encrypted CSV on import, which came up recently with a client. So that's my recommended password database if somebody can go there, and it's a paid option. It's a $20 a year or something along those lines. Similarly, with paper password organization, I started with passwords on paper. I had a sheet in each client's file with their passwords. And then when I went to Splash ID, I typed everything in. And then 6 months later, when Splash ID had worked out great, I took the leap of faith and went back and shredded all those pieces of paper. And then I was committed. But for someone else who's managing their passwords purely on paper, my core recommendations are, to address your points, write them in pencil or pen plus whiteout. And once every, and this is the hard part, 6 months, whatever, photocopy the lot and then put it in your safe deposit box and shred the previous photocopy. That's harder with a bound book than a spiral loose leaf approach, which is, but paper cannot be hacked. It's not online. It can be misplaced, it can get stolen. So lock and key, cleaning lady, family are potential vectors. So I generally start with a client to say, which are you more comfortable with, paper or digital? And then we go from there. But I don't make them do what I do, because many people I work with are elderly or don't feel comfortable with technology or are scared that something is going to go wrong. Whereas paper, for many people, is a very visceral thing. So what I mostly go with is, can it be backed up and can it be sorted? Like, loose leaf or index cards or Rolodex are better than bound book.
That's a neat distinction. I will note that I'm reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo, and he points out that Leonardo's notebooks are fully available at all these different museums, and they're on paper that's 500 years old. And he said, this is actually a pretty effective medium.
One more quick comment. I have some clients who use Keeper, Keeper,
Yes.
online. It's analogous to LastPass. And what I discovered with Keeper is that Keeper and I think LastPass and other online systems have a share this password or share these passwords with other people. Like Dropbox has a share this file, share this folder. You have to have a Keeper account. And I think I discovered after the free trial, I had to have a paid Keeper account.
Yeah.
But one of the fun things that I'm, decided it was a business expense is the client shared from their Keeper account to my Keeper account those passwords that I would need to help them with stuff, which meant that I still might need their help with two-factor authentication to sign in. But if they change those passwords, I don't have to go say, hey, you changed the password on me. I need to get in to do my thing that I'm doing
That
for you.
is so helpful. I really appreciate that. I've seen Keeper in action. I was impressed by it.
Right, although it's best to get your Keeper account all set up first before they do the share, because I found that somewhere in there between the free trial and the free trial expiring, the sharing thing went to hell. So you may have to be prepared to pay for it.
So I just want, Steve Eisenberg's leaving, and I just want to especially thank Steve and Drew for sharing and teaching us about KeePass. I want to thank everyone for coming today.